The next question is about how early can you diagnose the characteristics of Asperger syndrome. In classic autism, sometimes we can identify the signs in children of under a year. With Asperger syndrome, the signs are much more subtle, and I'd be very cautious of being confident of a diagnosis of Asperger syndrome in a child under the age of 2. But from 2 to 6, some signs are starting to become apparent. Now, if we look at the DSM-5 description of social-emotional reciprocity, there are 3 ways of expressing this. The first is to be socially isolated, withdrawn, introverted, not wanting to engage in others, on the periphery, and so conspicuous. My description is that that child has found something more interesting in life than socializing. But there's a second group that are not introverted, they are extroverted, motivated to socialize, want to socialize, but when they do, they are intrusive, abrasive, and annoying. They don't read the signals. I call them Italian drivers. Italian drivers don't always stop at a red traffic light. They park wherever they want to, and the speed limit is the minimum speed, not the maximum speed. So this is a person who becomes very upset when it doesn't work socially because they're highly motivated to do that. And people will say, the person can't have Asperger's because they want to socialize. Yes, but they're not reading the signals effectively. Or there's a third group, sometimes the girls with Asperger's, who are avid observers. They observe, analyze, and imitate. They copy successful girls. They copy the play of their female peers. And so they are less conspicuous, but it becomes quite apparent that this has been learnt and imitated by observation and analysis. So there's isolated, intrusive, and the observers. Also, the person may prefer to be with adults than children. In fact, that child may talk like an adult, borrowing adult phrases, think like an adult and want to be treated like an adult, and find that other children are boring and stupid. And if you hit them, they go away, which is fine because I want to be with adults, because they know things and they're calmer and quieter. Now, for children round about 4 to 6 years old, we would use theory of mind tasks, from the classic Sally Ann to a range of strategies and stories. For example, a little story of a girl who is coming up for her birthday, and when her mum and dad say, "What would you like for your birthday?" she says, "A puppy, please." So it comes the morning of her birthday, and she wakes up and thinks, "Today's my birthday, today I get my puppy." And she goes downstairs into the kitchen where her mum and dad are, and her birthday present, box with a pink ribbon, is on the table, and she thinks, my birthday party. And as she opens up, my birthday present, sorry, as she opens up the present, she finds inside books. No puppy, just books. She's so sad. But when her mother and father say, "Did you like your birthday present?" she says, "Oh, thank you. It was a lovely present." And you ask, did she really like the present? No. So why did she say thank you for a present she doesn't like? And I asked that to a 6-year-old girl with Asperger's syndrome last week, and she said, "I don't know." Or the person with Asperger's will say, "Well, the books, they're about puppies. That's why she liked them." So there's a logical explanation. So we have a range of tests. We look at the interests. Are they typical, but much more intense and dominant, or somewhat unusual? For example, an interest in lawnmowers in a girl who's 5 years old would be unusual. We also look at repetitive behavior, the routines, the aversion to change. That person likes predictability in their life. But we also find that there can be very intense emotions. And one of the earliest signs, especially for the girls with Asperger's syndrome, is intense distress that may be not consoled by compassion or affection or distraction. You have to wait until the energy of the emotion has gone. But it can be intense emotions but also the issue of affection. And when we deal with ASD, not only do we deal with anxiety, depression, and sadness, but also the ability to resonate with the happiness of others that the person may find difficult. The ability to relax, and also the ability to express affection. And that detachment can be confused with reactive attachment disorder, where the parents, mum in particular, may give 100% love and affection, but may only get 30 or 40% back from the child because the child is overwhelmed or confused by affection, not knowing the signals and how to respond. So we now have cognitive behavior therapy programs to teach affection. Now, obviously, we'll look at language issues. For those with Asperger's, language may have developed at an early age, but it is very pedantic. There is sometimes an odd prosody or melody or pitch associated with it. And there can be unusual qualities that make it almost adult-like and incredibly precise. Other issues are going to be sensory sensitivity, which may have been there from infancy. Sudden sharp noises, aromas, smells. But this can also affect eating, which is a sensory explosion of taste, colour, temperature, liquidity, noise, etc. So there can be a refusal of certain foods because of the sensory qualities. But also in play, the child may prefer construction toys and making things rather than soft toys, may be upset if interrupted in that activity, but when excited may have some of those mannerisms. But we would notice areas of ability in terms of solving practical problems, Lego, etc., or in musical ability. But we also find areas of sleep disturbance, and that may be a lifelong problem for the person with ASD. That is getting to sleep, staying asleep, quality of sleep, and duration of sleep. So sleep issues can be a concern. Parents will often report gastrointestinal problems. We can't say this is diagnostically important, but maybe medically important for some children. We do know a higher level of issues with autoimmune disorders in the families of those who have an ASD child. So there are a number of factors we would look at. Now, what we may decide is, on balance, there are sufficient signs between 2 and 6 years for a tentative diagnosis of Asperger's syndrome, which needs to be reviewed at 6 years old when the clinical picture is clearer. The fog has disappeared, and we can have more confidence in the diagnosis. But that 2, 3, 4, 5-year-old will still need help and will benefit from that help if we make a provisional diagnosis. When examining the play, there's another characteristic that I found which is interesting, and that is I'll often ask the child to draw a picture of their classroom or their playground. And interestingly, by chance, I did this with a child last week, and this was her picture. She's 6 years old with Asperger's syndrome, and that was her playground, which was technically successful with the slide and so on. But one of the characteristics is not people, which was interesting because when I asked this 6-year-old to draw a picture of herself, that was her picture. So she can draw people, but she chose not to include them in that scene. So there can be great attention to detail and artistic ability, but you draw the world through different eyes, and the eyes of someone who sees objects, not necessarily people.